Cheers, guys, and welcome to Uncle Scott's PANCAST. A lot going on in the old PANCAST today. We're going to talk Paella burners and Paella pans. We've got a Matfer update. Going to talk some Duparquet, some Mauviel, and more. Let's jump in and get started. Well, the housekeeping note here is the meet and greet. I should be in Manhattan on September 12th or 13th. I'm not exactly sure which day yet. But I am hoping that late in the afternoon, one of those days, that anybody that's in the New York City area that wants to get together and have a beer or a drink, hopefully we'll be able to do that. If you are interested, shoot me an email at unclescottskitchen@gmail.com, and you don't have to write a big email, just put meet and greet in the subject line. When we get a time and place, if it happens, I will let you know. Okay, let's talk about this Paella burner. Norbertize wrote in and said he loves the videos and learned a lot about carbon steel. He has the Lodge 15-inch Paella pan and wants to know if it will work on this Garcima Paella burner that I reviewed. So let's take a look at that. I have the Lodge 15-inch pan right here, and it will fit. And what he wants to know is if the outer ring could be used with it. I think I would not use the outer burner ring with this 15-inch pan. I think the burner is a little too wide for that. And one thing I like about this Garcima is it has two different burner rings and these kind of spokes here in the inner ring. Those also have flame coming out of those, so you get really good coverage on that internal ring. And it has separate controls for each ring. So if you wanted to use a smaller pan on this internal ring, you could do so. I would not use the outer ring with this 15-inch Lodge pan. That does bring up a point though, is if you already have a Paella pan and want to buy a burner for it, there are many other choices besides this one. If you go to the Garcima site and several other sites, they have charts and you can just look up whatever size Paella pan you have and they will have a burner that fits that particular pan. Also, this one came in a set with a bigger pan and a stand and the burner, and you don't have to buy a set. You can buy each component individually. So lots of choices out there when it comes to Paella. Also, this Garcima was called, the particular name of the set I got was the Duparquet set, and I could not figure out what Duparquet meant. Ran it through Google Translate. It wasn't, no word came back for the translation. Thankfully, N.A. Marion 31416, is that part of the Pi series? I'm not exactly sure about that, but he says Duparquet is an island off the coast of Spain. So I looked that up and he is right. It's a small island off the coast of Spain in the Mediterranean. And that is what this particular size of burner was named for. So that is good to know. Let's see, Duparquet. Let's talk about Duparquet. Jim Crackery 8321 wrote in and said Duparquet has a new pan and they call it the Blue Carbon Steel Access Frying Pan. And it's thinner and cheaper than some of the others. The 8-inch is only $40 and asked me if I'm interested in checking it out. Now, what I'm about to say, I say as probably the biggest Duparquet fan on the internet, I would say. At least I got to be pretty doggone close. I reviewed one of their blue carbon steel grill pans a year or two ago, and I just got to say, I would avoid the blue carbon steel and go for the Mineral Bs and Mineral B Pros. The Mineral Bs and Pros, they're thick, very high quality, fantastic cooking performance. They're a little more expensive than the blue carbon steel, but life is too short. If I'm getting one, I'm getting a Mineral B or Mineral B Pro. So blue carbon steels might be okay, but I am just not that interested in them. Go for the Mineral Bs, go higher end. Let's see, moving to Richmond, VA wrote in and asked about those new Matfer updated model carbon steel skillets. It's actually been about a year, almost to the day, that we started talking about those new Matfer models, and they have still not completely populated on the online retailers. And I end up talking to Matfer. I email them about every 2 months, and the story has not changed. They say that when they work through all the old inventory, those new models will be coming in behind. What's kind of crazy to me is that this has been going on for a year, so I don't know how much inventory they could possibly be working through. But the new models are slowly coming in behind. I think they're available on some sizes, but still waiting on a lot of the others. And it's kind of crazy because I think there's a lot of demand for those pans, and I think once they are in stock, they're going to sell really well. But I just don't know exactly when they are going to be in stock. And that's what I've heard for a year now. But as soon as I know, I will let you know. Let's see, Michael XZ1NK says he owns both Staub and Le Creuset pots and loves them both, but he says the Staub is his slight favorite. I'm going to agree with this. Le Creusets, I've got Le Creuset and I have Staub, and I'll have to tell the story of the black Le Creuset someday when we're all very bored. I won't get into that today. Le Creuset, especially here in America, is always at the high end. And everybody loves it. America's Test Kitchen loves it, and everybody puts it on their wedding registries. So Le Creuset is always at the top, but I found the Staubs to be very high quality, and I can't tell hardly any difference at all in cooking performance between Staub and Le Creuset. And I find myself, as crazy as this sounds, I almost find myself rooting a little bit more for Staub. I don't know why, if it's just kind of pulling for the underdog a little bit, but if you can root for cookware, then I root sometimes for Staub. So Michele Duro 5948, possibly French, wrote in and said, nice roll flip in that egg sliding video. I had a nice roll flip, and he gave me a compliment for that. Thank you. And my only advice for flipping eggs is, if at all possible, don't think about it. If you sit there and think about it and line it up and agonize over it, that seems to mess things up. Where if you just don't think about it and just do it, it seems to work a lot better. And if you ask my wife, if you need someone to sit around and not think about anything, I would probably be your man. Let's see, talking Mauviel. I hadn't talked Mauviel lately. I've got a couple of comments and emails about this. The 1D200 wrote in, and he's talking about a new Mauviel M6 series. Says I should check that out if I'm looking for some thicker copper. I did check that out on the Mauviel website. I'm going to have to email them and see if I can get some more information. It is a 2.6 millimeter pan, but it's 6 layers, and there's some aluminum and stainless steel layers. And I'm not sure how thick that copper is. If it's just kind of a copper plating or a very thin layer of copper, might not get the same cooking performance you would get if you had thicker copper cookware. And along those lines, Jason Bourne 9392 wrote in and was talking about the review of this guy. And he says he's a big fan of copper cookware, and he thought the review was excellent and extremely thorough. Thank you, Jason. And he's a big fan of heavier and thicker. The heavier and thicker, the better. And it's something he would not have known without that review. But the M250s, he really likes. This is an M250. In that 250, we've talked about it before, that 250 means that the copper or the pan is 2.5 millimeters thick. They don't make these 250s anymore, at least they haven't for the last year or two. If you poke around on the internet, occasionally you can find a stray piece here or there, and if I find one, I would jump on one. But they're very tough to find these days. They make a 200, which is 2 millimeters thick, and a 150, which is 1.5 millimeters thick. Me personally, I would avoid that 1.5 millimeter thick. 2 may be the best you can get from some of the mass market brands these days. I know Duparquet also makes a 2 millimeter thick pan. That's kind of in that go, no-go zone. I think it's okay. But if you can find thicker copper, thicker is better when it comes to cooking performance. Now, there are some smaller companies. Falk makes some thicker stuff these days, and I've had pretty good luck with Falk. Also, there's Duparquet and Brooklyn Copper. Duparquet, if I win the Mega Millions jackpot lottery, I'll buy some Duparquet cookware. Brooklyn Copper cookware, also very high end. The problem with them is they are completely sold out every time I go to the website. I don't know how. I don't know if it's a supply chain issue or a management issue, who knows, but I can never seem to get my hands on any of their products. So I'm kind of loath to talk about them if we can't get them and try them out. But there are a few options for thicker copper these days if you really hunt around. Let's see, Kathy Jones Hatcher wrote in, and she says if she has a sticky spot in her carbon steel, should she use some steel wool on that sticky spot and reseason, or should she use steel wool on the whole pan and then reseason the entire thing? First, I would not use steel wool all over a pan unless it really, really needed it. You're going to get some micro scratches in there, which are not that big of a deal, but still, I don't see any reason to do that. What you can do with those sticky spots, depending on the level of gunk, if it's just a little one, heat the pan up until it smokes, and hopefully that stickiness will harden in and kind of become slick, hard seasoning. And you can do that a time or two if you need to. If it's really gunky and that stuff is really giving you some trouble, yeah, you can hit it with steel wool. I would only use the steel wool on that spot, and I wouldn't do the entire pan unless I had to. And then I would just do a maintenance touch-up seasoning and go right on about cooking. All right, don't forget to let me know if you're interested in the meet and greet, and also definitely check out the Uncle Scott's merch. Thank you for watching, and we will see you again next time on Uncle Scott's PANCAST.